Let me be honest with you right from the start. Within the next 60 minutes, something inside you is going to shift. Not because I have some magic formula, but because you're about to understand yourself in a way most people never do. You're going to discover why your words sometimes feel stuck, why your voice shakes when it matters most, and, more importantly, how to change all of that starting today. Here's something that might surprise you. The people you admire for their speaking ability, the ones who walk into rooms and command attention without trying, they weren't born that way. Not a single one of them. They learned. They practiced. They stumbled and got back up. And that's exactly what you're going to do, except you're going to do it faster because you have a roadmap they never had. Most of us go through life using maybe 10% of our communication potential. We trip over our thoughts during job interviews. We rehearse conversations in our heads for hours, and then forget everything the moment we open our mouths. We watch someone else articulate the exact idea we had, and we wonder why we couldn't find those words ourselves. Sound familiar? I thought so, because that used to be me, too. But here's the beautiful part. Communication isn't some genetic gift handed down to a chosen few. It's a skill, like cooking, like learning an instrument, like anything else worth doing. And skills can be learned by anyone willing to show up and do the work. That person is you. I already know that because you're still here reading this. By the time we're done together, you'll understand the invisible forces working inside your brain every time you speak. You'll know how to quiet that critical voice that tells you you're not smart enough, not eloquent enough, not worthy enough to be heard. You'll have practical tools for controlling your voice, reading a room, handling tough conversations, and connecting with anyone, anywhere, anytime. This isn't theory. This is your transformation. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's begin this journey together. Chapter 1. What's really happening inside your brain when you speak? Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're standing in front of a group of people at work. Maybe it's a team meeting. Maybe it's a presentation. Your palms are sweating. Your mind goes blank. The words that were so clear in your head 5 minutes ago have completely evaporated. You manage to say something, but it comes out tangled and rushed. Afterward, you replay the moment over and over, cringing at every stumble. Now here's the thing most people don't realize. That experience has almost nothing to do with your intelligence or your vocabulary. It has everything to do with your brain chemistry. When you perceive a situation as threatening, and yes, your brain treats a boardroom presentation with the same urgency as encountering a wild animal on a hiking trail, your nervous system hits the panic button. Stress. Hormones flood your bloodstream like a dam breaking open. Cortisol, adrenaline. These chemicals are brilliant for running away from physical danger, but for delivering a coherent sentence, they're absolutely terrible. Your working memory, that mental workspace where you organize thoughts and select words, essentially shrinks. Imagine trying to cook a 5-course meal on a cutting board the size of a postcard. That's what your brain is working with when fear takes over. Your vocabulary contracts. Complex ideas become impossible to articulate. and you're left standing there, wondering what happened to the person who was so prepared 5 minutes ago. But wait, before you think this means you're doomed, let me share something that changed everything for me. Confident speakers experience the exact same chemical response. Their hearts race too. Their palms get clammy too. The difference isn't that they don't feel fear. The difference is they've trained their minds to interpret that fear differently. Think of it like surfing. The wave is coming whether you want it to or not. A beginner sees the wave and panics. A skilled surfer sees the same wave and thinks, "Here we go." Same wave. Completely different outcome based on interpretation. That's exactly what happens with communication anxiety. You can learn to ride the wave instead of being crushed by it. Your brain processes communication on 3 distinct levels, and understanding these levels is like being handed the keys to a car you've been trying to push uphill. The first level is reactive processing. This is autopilot. Someone asks you a question, and you blurt out the first thing that comes to mind. No filter, no strategy, just raw, unprocessed reaction. Most casual conversations happen here, and it's fine for chatting with friends about weekend plans. But for anything that actually matters, reactive processing will let you down. The second level is intentional processing. This is where you start choosing your words consciously. You think before you speak. You consider how something might sound before you say it. You edit in real time. It requires more mental energy, but the quality of your communication jumps dramatically. The third level is strategic processing. This is where the masters operate. At this level, you're simultaneously aware of 3 things: your message, your audience's reaction, and the direction you want the conversation to go. You're not just speaking, you're orchestrating an experience. And before you think that sounds manipulative, let me reframe it. Strategic communication is about being so present and so aware that you can serve your audience better. It's about making sure your ideas actually land the way you intend them to. That's not manipulation. That's respect for the people listening to you. Your brain also has a fascinating built-in filter called the reticular activating system. Think of it like a personal algorithm, similar to the one that decides what shows up on your social media feed. It highlights whatever you've trained it to focus on. If you've spent years telling yourself you're a terrible speaker, that algorithm surfaces every fumble, every awkward pause, every moment where you wish you'd said something differently. It's confirmation bias running on autopilot. But here's the exciting flip side. When you start feeding that algorithm new data, when you begin believing you're becoming a better communicator, the whole feed changes. Suddenly, you notice the moments when you explained something clearly. You catch yourself making a great point in a meeting. You remember the time someone told you that you really nailed an explanation. Same person, same brain, different algorithm. The neuroscience goes even deeper. When you speak, something remarkable happens in the brains of the people listening to you. Their mirror neurons fire as though they were speaking your words themselves. This means your emotional state is literally contagious. When you speak with warmth and certainty, the people listening physically experience that warmth and certainty in their own bodies. When you speak with confusion and doubt, they catch that too, like a cold spreading through an office. This is why preparation matters so much more than most people realize. It's not about memorizing lines. It's about knowing your material so deeply that your brain can focus on connection instead of content generation. When you're not scrambling to remember what comes next, you can pour all that mental energy into how you deliver your message. You move from hoping you'll find the right words to deliberately choosing them. That shift changes everything. There's one more concept I want you to carry with you. Cognitive load theory. Your brain has a limited amount of processing power at any given moment. Think of it like the battery on your phone. When you have 20 apps running in the background, everything slows down and the battery drains fast. When you're simultaneously trying to remember what to say, figure out how to say it, monitor whether you're making sense, and read the room for reactions, your mental battery is at 1%. This is exactly why nervous speakers lose their train of thought mid-sentence, or suddenly can't find a word they use every single day. Their mental processing is maxed out. Skilled communicators solve this by automating certain parts of their delivery. They develop go-to transition phrases. They have practiced ways of explaining their core ideas. They've built mental frameworks for organizing thoughts quickly. All of this frees up precious resources for the things that really matter: connecting with people, reading the room, and adjusting in real time. Understanding these principles isn't just interesting science. It's the foundation everything else is built on. When you know exactly why your brain sometimes betrays you in important moments, you can stop blaming yourself and start building systems that actually work. Chapter 2. Taming the voice inside your head. Here's something nobody talks about enough. Long before you open your mouth to speak, there's already a conversation happening. It's the conversation between you and you, that running monologue inside your skull that never seems to take a break. And honestly, for most people, that inner voice is not a very kind roommate. Right now, as you're absorbing these ideas, that voice is active. Maybe it's saying, "This is actually helpful. I should try this." Or maybe it's whispering, "Sounds nice in theory, but I could never pull this off." Whatever it's saying, I want you to know something important. That voice is not telling you the truth. It's telling you a story. And stories can be rewritten. The inner voice of someone who communicates with confidence sounds fundamentally different from the inner voice of someone who dreads speaking up. Picture two people about to walk into the same job interview. Person A's inner voice says, "They're going to see right through me. I'm going to freeze up and everyone will know I don't belong here." Person B's inner voice says, "I've prepared well and I have real experience to share. Let's see how I can show them what I bring to the table." Same interview, same hiring panel, completely different internal experiences. And here's the part that really matters. Those different internal experiences create different external realities. Because your inner dialogue doesn't just affect how you feel, it shapes your posture, your eye contact, your vocal tone, even the words you reach for. It's a waterfall. The thought creates the feeling shapes the body shapes the delivery shapes the outcome, and the outcome feeds back into the original thought. If you want to change what comes out of your mouth, you need to change what's happening between your ears first. Now, let me be gentle here, because I have a feeling I know where your inner voice learned its script. Maybe there was a teacher who made you feel small when you gave a wrong answer in front of the entire class. Maybe there was a parent whose corrections felt more like verdicts than lessons. Maybe classmates laughed at how you said a certain word, and that laughter carved itself into your memory like initials in wet concrete. These experiences didn't just hurt in the moment. They built neural highways in your brain that automatically activate every time you're about to speak in a situation that feels high stakes. But here's what fills me with hope for you. Your brain is not concrete. It's more like a river, and rivers can be redirected at any point in their journey. Neuroscience has shown us that neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to form new connections and pathways, doesn't expire. It's available to you right now at whatever age you are, in whatever circumstances you're in. Every single time you consciously choose a different thought, you're digging a new channel. You're teaching the river to flow in a new direction. The process starts with something deceptively simple: paying attention. For the next 7 days, become a curious observer of your own mind. Notice what your inner voice says before different types of conversations. Pay attention to the difference between how you talk to yourself before grabbing lunch with a close friend versus before presenting an idea to your team. You will probably discover something eye-opening. Your inner voice doesn't use one script. It has different scripts for different situations. And the higher the stakes feel, the harsher and more fearful that script becomes. Once you can clearly see these patterns, you can begin rewriting them. Elite communicators use mental rehearsal before important moments. They close their eyes and vividly imagine themselves speaking clearly, making strong points, and connecting with their audience. They see understanding in people's eyes. They feel steadiness in their own chest. They hear calm authority in their voice. This isn't daydreaming, it's neuroscience. When you vividly imagine yourself performing well, your brain builds neural pathways that closely mirror actual experience. Professional athletes have used this for decades because imagined practice creates real neurological changes. Your brain, in many ways, treats a vivid mental rehearsal like a real event that already happened successfully. But visualization alone won't carry you. You also need to challenge the core beliefs generating those anxious thoughts. Most communication anxiety comes down to 3 fundamental fears: fear of being judged, fear of being rejected, fear of not being enough. These fears turn every conversation into an audition with only 2 outcomes: pass or fail. And when life feels like one endless tryout, of course you're going to be anxious. anyone would be. Confident communicators have broken free from this trap by shifting to what I'd call a contribution mindset. They don't enter rooms thinking, "I hope they approve of me." They enter thinking, "I hope I can add something valuable here." They trust that their perspective matters. They know their preparation has worth. And this isn't ego. This is honest self-respect grounded in real effort. To build this mindset, your brain needs evidence. It's a skeptic, and it demands proof. So start collecting it. Keep a simple running list of moments when your communication created something positive. When someone said, "That question really made me think." When you saw understanding click in someone's eyes because of how you explained something. When your input shifted a conversation in a useful direction. Your brain has been building a case against you for years. It's time to build the case for you. Here's another technique that sounds deceptively simple, but is backed by solid research. When nerves hit before speaking, instead of telling yourself, "I'm nervous," tell yourself, "I'm excited." Physiologically, anxiety and excitement are nearly identical. Same heart rate, same heightened alertness, same energy surge. The only difference is the label your brain assigns to the experience. Swap the label, and you change how that energy flows through your entire system. And please hear this, because it might be the most important thing in this entire chapter. Perfect speakers do not exist. The most articulate person you've ever admired has stumbled over words, lost their place, and said things that came out completely sideways. The difference is, they don't treat those moments like catastrophes. They treat them like hiccups. Oh well, moving on. When you stop chasing perfection and start pursuing genuine connection, your communication transforms almost overnight. Because authenticity doesn't require flawlessness. It requires showing up honestly. The inner voice that truly changes everything isn't the one that says you're brilliant and everyone adores you. That's fantasy. The inner voice that transforms your speaking is the one that says, "You care about these people, you prepared, and you have something real to offer." Focus on giving, not protecting. That single pivot from self-defense to service rewrites the entire emotional equation of communication. Chapter 3. Your body is always talking. Let me share something that might sting a little. You could have the most brilliant idea anyone has ever heard. You could have rehearsed the perfect words to deliver it. But if your body is broadcasting a different message, nobody is going to trust your words. They're going to trust your body. Study after study confirms that an overwhelming portion of how people interpret communication comes not from what you say, but from everything surrounding what you say. Your posture, your gestures, your facial expressions, how you hold eye contact, the rhythm and warmth of your voice. Your body is a radio station that never stops transmitting, and most people have never learned how to control the signal. Think of it this way. Your words are the screenplay of a film, but your body language is the actor performing it. And when the performance contradicts the script, the audience always believes the performance. You can say, "I'm thrilled about this opportunity." But if your arms are crossed, your shoulders are caved in, and your eyes are searching the floor for an escape route, every person in the room will feel the disconnect, even if they can't name it. So let's start with posture, the foundation of everything. And I'm not talking about standing at attention like a soldier. I'm talking about grounded, relaxed openness. When you sit or stand with your shoulders naturally back, your chest gently open, and your spine comfortably tall, you're not just acting confident for an audience. You're actually triggering confidence inside yourself. Research has shown that adopting open, expansive postures alters your hormonal balance within minutes. Confidence-related hormones increase. Stress hormones decrease. Your body is literally reshaping your brain chemistry based on how you arrange yourself in space. And the reverse is painfully true. When you fold in on yourself, when you hunch and cross your arms and shrink your physical footprint, you're sending a chemical telegram to your own nervous system that says, "Danger, be small, don't draw attention." And your brain listens. Your thoughts become more cautious, your words come out more tentative, your creativity contracts, all because of posture. Now, let's talk about the most powerful nonverbal tool in your entire arsenal: your eyes. Eye contact is where human connection truly lives. When you look someone steadily in the eyes while speaking, you're communicating presence, sincerity, and courage. You're saying, without words, "I'm here. I believe what I'm telling you. I'm not hiding." But balance matters here. Too little eye contact and you seem evasive or unsure. Too much and you cross into uncomfortable intensity. In one-on-one conversation, aim for roughly 70% eye contact while listening, tapering to about 50% while speaking. In group settings, give your full attention to one individual for a complete thought, about 3 to 5 seconds. Then shift to someone in a different part of the room. This creates intimacy even in a crowd. Your face has to match the story too. If you're sharing something exciting with the expression of someone reading a parking ticket, your audience will believe the face, not the words. Skilled communicators let their faces become emotional punctuation marks, underlining key moments, reflecting genuine feeling, drawing others into the emotional reality of the message. Let's talk about hands. Gestures are either powerful allies or distracting enemies. When nervousness takes over, your body looks for physical outlets. Fidgeting with a pen, adjusting glasses repeatedly, small, repetitive hand movements that silently broadcast anxiety. And your audience picks up every one of these signals often without consciously realizing it. Confident speakers use gestures with purpose. Big concept? The hands open up. Precise detail? The gesture tightens and focuses. Critical moment? A deliberate movement anchors the point visually. And always, the scale of your gestures matches the setting. Coffee conversation? Subtle. Conference stage? Expansive enough for the back row. Your voice, though it carries words, is also nonverbal. Pace, volume, tone, and pauses are instruments most people never learn to play. Speaking too fast overwhelms listeners and leaks nervousness. Speaking too slowly risks sounding uncertain or patronizing. The key is strategic variation. Slow down for complex ideas to give brains time to absorb. Pick up the pace when building energy. And use pauses. A pause before a key statement builds anticipation. A pause after lets it resonate. Silence isn't emptiness, it's emphasis. Volume should serve your audience. Too quiet and they strain, exhausting their attention. Too loud and they retreat. Aim for a level where the farthest person can hear you without effort. And remember, your tone carries emotional information that can completely override your words. The phrase, "That's a great idea," can express genuine enthusiasm, subtle sarcasm, or complete indifference, depending entirely on how you say it. Finally, breathe. Shallow chest breathing produces a thin, strained voice that whispers anxiety. Deep diaphragmatic breathing creates a resonant, grounded voice that naturally conveys calm. Before any conversation that matters, take 3 slow breaths. Feel your belly expand. This single practice will transform your vocal presence more than any technique in this guide. And remember, the space you claim matters too. Confident people take up appropriate space. They don't shrink into corners. They don't invade others' territory. They stand in a way that says, "I belong here, and I respect that you do too." Chapter 4. The words you choose are building worlds. Let me share something that completely changed the way I think about language. Every word you speak doesn't just describe what's happening, it shapes what happens next. Every single word carries 2 layers of weight. There's the surface meaning, the dictionary definition, and then there's the invisible layer, all the emotions, memories, and associations that word quietly triggers in the person hearing it. Here's a quick experiment. Imagine someone tells you, "We have a problem with the project." Notice what happens in your body. A little tightness, maybe. A sense that something is wrong. Someone might be blamed. Now imagine they say, "We've got a challenge with the project." Feel the difference? It's subtle but powerful. The word challenge invites your brain to think about overcoming, solving, rising to the occasion. The word problem invites your brain to think about fault, failure, and frustration. Same situation, one word changed. Entirely different emotional landscape for the listener. This isn't about being slippery or manipulative. It's about caring enough to choose words that invite your listener into the best version of the conversation. It's about understanding that your words don't just carry information, they carry feelings. And feelings drive every decision a human being makes. Most people operate with a working vocabulary of around 3,000 to 5,000 words. But the average educated adult recognizes somewhere between 20 and 35,000. Think about that gap for a moment. It's like having a massive box of colored pencils, but always reaching for the same 5 or 6. All those other colors represent precision, nuance, and emotional textures that could make your ideas land with far more impact. But before you rush off to memorize obscure words from a thesaurus, let me save you some time. That approach backfires almost every time. Using words that don't fit naturally into conversation doesn't make you sound articulate. It makes you sound like you're trying too hard. The goal isn't to impress people with vocabulary they need to Google. The goal is to have enough words at your disposal that you can always find the one that fits the moment perfectly. Strategic vocabulary building starts with your world. If you work in business, expand your language around strategy, leadership, collaboration, and problem-solving. If you're in a creative field, develop richer ways to describe processes, feelings, and aesthetics. If you work with technology, master the art of translating complex concepts into language anyone can grasp. The most powerful vocabulary growth comes from exposure to people who communicate brilliantly in your space. Read how thoughtful leaders in your industry express ideas. Listen to podcasts where articulate experts unpack complex topics. Pay attention not just to which words they use, but how they combine them to create specific effects in the listener. Word choice becomes especially crucial in sensitive moments. Here's what I mean. Imagine you disagree with someone in a meeting. You could say, "You're wrong about this," and, technically, you might be right that they're wrong. But what you've actually done is slam a door shut. Their defenses go up instantly. The conversation is now a contest, not a collaboration. But what if instead you said, "I've arrived at a different conclusion, and I'd love to walk you through my thinking"? Same disagreement, but this version keeps the door wide open. It respects their intelligence. It invites dialogue instead of combat. Understanding the emotional atmosphere of words gives you remarkable power. Calling someone detail-oriented instead of picky highlights the positive side of their attention to precision. Framing something as an investment rather than a cost changes how people evaluate their willingness to commit. Describing a team as evolving rather than struggling acknowledges difficulty while pointing toward growth. These aren't tricks, they're acts of emotional intelligence expressed through language. Precision also means cutting out words that dilute your power. Filler words like like, you know, and sort of don't just make you sound uncertain. They actually train your brain to think in vague, imprecise ways. When vague language becomes habitual, vague thinking follows. But when you commit to specific, intentional language, your thoughts sharpen in response. Notice the difference between these two statements. The first, "I think maybe we should consider possibly looking into this approach at some point." The second, "I recommend we implement this strategy by next Friday." Same person, potentially the same idea. But the second version carries weight. It communicates clear thinking and earns immediate respect because people instinctively trust someone who knows what they're saying and says it without hedging. Metaphors and analogies deserve special attention because they're among the most powerful tools in any communicator's toolkit. When you can take something unfamiliar and compare it to something your listener already understands, you don't just explain an idea. You make them feel it. You give it texture and dimension. For example, instead of saying, "Our departments aren't coordinating well," you could say, "Right now, our departments are like musicians in separate practice rooms, each playing beautifully on their own, but producing noise when they come together because nobody's looking at the same sheet music. That metaphor doesn't just describe the problem, it implies the solution. We don't need better individual musicians. We need a shared score and someone to keep time. The rhythm of your words matters just as much as their meaning. Short sentences punch. They create urgency. They command attention. Longer sentences, on the other hand, allow you to explore the nuances and complexities of an idea, drawing your listener along a journey that builds understanding step by step. The masters of communication dance between both, using short sentences for impact and longer ones for depth, creating a rhythm that keeps people engaged without exhausting them. Power words. Those vocabulary choices that create strong emotional images and responses deserve a place in your toolkit. Words like transform, breakthrough, essential, and remarkable carry more emotional energy than their neutral cousins like change, improvement, important, and good. But power words are like hot sauce. A strategic dash elevates the whole dish. Too much ruins everything. Use them at moments of genuine emphasis, and they'll land with force. Scatter them everywhere, and they become background noise. Building your vocabulary is an ongoing practice, not a weekend project. Read material that stretches you. When you encounter a word that resonates, don't just note its definition. Study how it was used. Try weaving it into a conversation that day. Keep a running collection of words and phrases that feel powerful to you. Over time, these words migrate from your recognition vocabulary into your active vocabulary, and your ability to express exactly what you mean in exactly the right way grows steadily richer. Chapter 5. Your voice is an instrument. Learn to play it. Close your eyes for a second and think about a voice that captivates you. Maybe it's a podcast host who makes you feel like they're sitting right next to you. Maybe it's a speaker whose words seem to physically move through the room. Maybe it's a friend who could read a grocery list and somehow make it sound interesting. What is it about their voice that pulls you in? It's not magic, it's mastery. And it's something you can develop too. Your voice is an instrument, as real and as trainable as a guitar or a piano. Most people use only a tiny fraction of what their voice can do because they've never been taught to think about it consciously. They've never learned the basic building blocks of vocal production: breath support, resonance, pitch variation, and rhythm. Once you understand these elements, you stop being at the mercy of however your voice happens to come out, and you start making deliberate choices about how you sound. Everything begins with breathing, not the shallow chest breathing that most of us default to, where your shoulders rise and fall with each inhale. That kind of breathing is fine for sitting at a desk, but it's terrible for speaking. It gives you a thin, strained vocal quality that runs out of air at the worst possible moments, usually right in the middle of your most important sentence. What you need is diaphragmatic breathing, breathing that originates deep in your belly rather than high in your chest. When you breathe this way, your voice has a steady supply of air supporting it, Like a foundation under a building, your words come out fuller, steadier, and more resonant. You can speak longer sentences without gasping. You can project across a room without shouting. Here's how to practice it. Place one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach. Now breathe in slowly through your nose. If you're doing it right, the hand on your stomach moves outward, while the hand on your chest barely moves at all. This takes conscious practice because most adults have developed shallow breathing habits that feel completely normal, even though they're limiting vocal potential every single day. Resonance is what gives a voice richness and depth. Sound starts at your vocal cords, but where it goes from there determines its quality. Think of it like music. A guitar string vibrating on its own makes a thin, tinny sound. But that same string vibrating inside the wooden body of the guitar produces a full, warm tone. Your body works the same way. When sound resonates through your chest, your throat, and the spaces in your face, it gains warmth and presence. To feel this, try humming with your lips closed. Really commit to it. Feel the vibrations buzzing in your chest, your throat, your cheekbones. Now, slowly open your mouth and let that hum become a spoken word, carrying that same buzzy richness into your voice. Many people unconsciously tighten their throat when they're nervous, which chokes off resonance and makes their voice sound thin and squeezed. Learning to keep your throat relaxed while maintaining good breath support is one of the fastest ways to improve how you sound. Pitch variation is what keeps people listening. When someone speaks on the same note for minutes at a time, your brain literally starts tuning them out. It's the vocal equivalent of staring at a blank wall. Your brain is wired to notice change, so when nothing changes in a voice, attention drifts. Skilled speakers use pitch like a painter uses color. They lower their pitch when they want to convey authority or finality, especially when making a key statement or wrapping up an idea. They raise it slightly when introducing something new or asking a question, signaling curiosity and openness. They avoid the trap of uptalk, that pattern of ending every statement with a rising pitch that makes everything sound like a question and quietly erodes your credibility. Now, let's talk about something most people fear, but great speakers treasure: the pause. Many speakers rush through their words as if silence were an enemy that might swallow them whole. They chain sentences together without any space between them, creating a machine gun delivery that overwhelms listeners and makes complex ideas impossible to absorb. But here's the truth. Pauses are not the absence of communication. They are communication. A pause before an important point builds anticipation. It's like the moment of silence before the orchestra plays its first note. Everything that follows lands with more weight because of the space that preceded it. A pause after a key idea gives your audience time to absorb what you've said. It's a gift of processing time. And a pause when you've lost your train of thought? That's not a failure. That's composure. It says, I'm comfortable enough with myself to take a moment and find the right words rather than filling the air with noise. Different content calls for different rhythmic approaches. Complex technical explanations need slower delivery with more pauses, giving your listener's brain time to build understanding. Storytelling and high-energy moments benefit from a quicker pace that builds momentum and excitement. And when you arrive at your most important point, slow down. Add space before and after. Let it breathe. That change in rhythm signals to every brain in the room. Pay attention. This matters. Vocal warm-ups before important speaking moments might sound like something only actors do, but they make a genuine difference for anyone who wants to sound their best. Athletes stretch before competition. Musicians tune their instruments. Your voice deserves the same preparation. A few minutes of humming, gentle lip trills, and tongue twisters can transform your vocal quality from cold and tight to warm and fluid. Articulation, the crispness with which you shape each word, is the final piece. When you mumble, drop the ends of words, or let syllables blur together, you're forcing your listener to work harder just to decode what you're saying. That extra effort steals mental energy away from actually processing your ideas. Clear articulation isn't about sounding formal or perfect. It's about making your words easy to receive. And that's an act of generosity toward the people listening to you. The beautiful thing about voice training is that it compounds over time. Every day you practice breathing from your diaphragm, every conversation where you consciously vary your pitch, every moment where you choose a powerful pause instead of a rushed filler word, you're building vocal habits that eventually become second nature. Your voice becomes an instrument you play with confidence, rather than a thing that just happens to you. Chapter 6. Listening is your secret superpower. I know this might seem counterintuitive in a guide about speaking, but stay with me. The single most powerful thing you can do to become a better speaker is to become a vastly better listener. Not the kind of listening where you're nodding politely while secretly planning what you'll say next. Real listening, the kind that changes the energy in a room. Here's why. When you truly listen to someone, deeply and completely, you gather intelligence that transforms the quality of everything you say afterward. You discover what the person actually cares about. You pick up on emotions they might not even be expressing directly. You understand the real question behind the surface question. And armed with all of this understanding, when you do speak, your words land with a precision and relevance that feels almost magnetic. People walk away from conversations with great listeners thinking, that person really understood me. And being understood is one of the deepest human needs there is. Active listening isn't passive. It's one of the most mentally demanding things you can do. When you're truly listening, you're processing on multiple channels simultaneously. You're hearing the literal words being spoken. You're detecting the emotional current beneath those words. You're sensing the assumptions and beliefs that shape the speaker's perspective. And you're intuiting the unspoken needs or desires driving their communication. Most people listen at only the first level, catching the words and maybe the general topic. Someone says, I think we should explore other options for this project. And they hear a suggestion about project alternatives. But a skilled listener hears several layers at once. They might detect uncertainty about the current direction, frustration about not being consulted, a need to feel that their expertise is valued, or maybe fear that the project as planned will fail. Each of these possibilities suggests a very different response. And the listener who can pick up these layers crafts replies that address what's really happening, not just what's sitting on the surface. One of the biggest obstacles to good listening is your own internal commentary. While someone else is talking, most people are already composing their response, evaluating whether they agree or mentally rehearsing their rebuttal. That internal chatter is like trying to hear a conversation at a noisy restaurant. The other person is talking, but you're mostly hearing your own thoughts. The discipline of true listening means noticing when your mind starts drafting a reply and gently pulling your attention back to the speaker. Not judging yourself for drifting, just returning, again and again. This focused attention does something powerful beyond just improving comprehension. It communicates respect and genuine interest in a way people can feel. And when people feel truly heard, they become dramatically more open to what you have to say in return. Reflection is one of the most underrated listening tools. Before launching into your own perspective, briefly mirror back what you've understood. Not parroting their exact words, but demonstrating that you've grasped both the content and the emotion behind it. If someone says, "I'm exhausted from these constant deadline changes. It feels like nothing I do matters because the goalposts keep moving," you might respond, "It sounds like the constant shifts are making it hard to feel like your work has real impact, and that's draining." That kind of response tells the speaker, "I didn't just hear your words, I heard you." And that changes the entire dynamic of the conversation. Questions are another powerful listening tool, but most people ask terrible ones. Closed questions that invite one-word answers shut conversations down. Leading questions that steer toward your preferred answer are transparent and insulting. The questions that transform conversations are open, genuinely curious, and designed to help the other person think more deeply. Instead of, "Don't you think we should try a different approach?" try, "What factors do you think are most important as we evaluate where to go from here?" Instead of, "Are you happy with the results?" ask, "What aspects of this outcome feel right to you, and where do you see room for something better?" These questions don't just extract information. They honor the other person's intelligence and invite the kind of thoughtful exchange that leads to genuinely better outcomes. Your body speaks volumes while you're listening too. Leaning slightly forward signals engagement. Open posture communicates receptiveness. Appropriate eye contact shows that you're present. Matching your facial expression to the emotional tone of what's being shared demonstrates empathy. If someone is telling you about a struggle, let your face reflect that gravity. If they're sharing something they're excited about, let your expression show warmth and interest. And here's something most people forget. Learn to tolerate silence. When someone finishes a thought, resist the urge to immediately jump in. Give them a beat. Often, the most important thing a person has to say comes after the first pause, when they realize you're still listening and they feel safe going deeper. Rushing to fill every silence robs people of the space they need to share what truly matters. The most advanced listeners develop an ability to hear what isn't being said. They notice topics someone carefully avoids. They sense emotions being held beneath the surface. They pick up on assumptions that go unstated. This isn't mind reading, it's deep attention. And it allows you to ask the kinds of questions that help people access thoughts and feelings they didn't even know they had. Active listening is especially transformative during conflict. When someone feels genuinely heard and understood, even if you disagree with them, their defensiveness melts. Their grip on their position loosens. They become willing to consider perspectives they would have rejected outright if they felt dismissed or unheard. Listening doesn't mean agreeing. It means showing someone that their experience is real and that you respect it enough to truly take it in before offering your own view. Make a commitment to practice this. In your next important conversation, focus entirely on understanding before responding. Notice how the quality of your responses improves. Notice how the other person's energy shifts when they feel truly received. This is the quiet superpower hiding in plain sight. And once you develop it, every other communication skill you build becomes exponentially more effective. Chapter 7. Navigating the conversations everyone avoids. Let's talk about the conversations that keep you up at night. The ones you rehearse in the shower. The ones you've been putting off for days, weeks, maybe months. That conversation with a colleague who keeps taking credit for your work. The discussion with your partner about something that's been quietly building resentment. The feedback you need to give someone who won't want to hear it. Difficult conversations are the ones most people handle so badly that they end up creating bigger problems than the ones they were trying to solve. They either avoid them entirely, letting small issues grow into relationship-destroying resentments, or they charge in with so much emotional heat that the conversation explodes before anything productive can happen. Both approaches leave wreckage behind. But here's what I want you to understand. Mastering difficult conversations isn't just another communication skill, it's one of the most life-changing abilities you can develop. Because the quality of your relationships, your career, and honestly, your inner peace depends on your ability to address hard things directly, honestly, and with enough care that the relationship survives and often grows stronger. The first thing to recognize is that the difficulty almost never lives in the topic itself. It lives in the emotions wrapped around the topic. When conversations involve identity, ego, deeply held values, or real consequences, the primitive part of your brain sounds the alarm. Fight or flight activates. Rational thinking gets hijacked by emotional reactivity, and suddenly two intelligent adults are behaving like cornered animals instead of collaborating human beings. Your job in these moments is twofold. Manage your own emotional state and create conditions where the other person can stay rational enough to actually hear you. Neither of these happens by accident. Both require preparation and skill. Most people prepare for difficult conversations the wrong way. They build their case. They rehearse their arguments. They anticipate what the other person will say and prepare counterattacks. This is preparing for war, not conversation, and it virtually guarantees the outcome will feel like a battle regardless of who wins, because both people lose when the relationship takes damage. Instead, try preparing differently. Start by getting crystal clear on what you actually want from the conversation. Not what you want to say, but what outcome you're hoping for. Do you want to change a specific behavior? Do you need to share information the other person deserves to know? Are you trying to understand their perspective better? Are you hoping to repair something that's been damaged between you? When you know your goal, every word you choose can serve that goal rather than just venting frustration. Next, genuinely try to see the situation through their eyes. This isn't about agreeing with them, it's about understanding what makes their position feel reasonable to them. What pressures are they under? What fears might be driving their behavior? What needs are they trying to meet? When you walk into a conversation with genuine curiosity about the other person's experience, your energy shifts from adversarial to collaborative. And people can feel that shift before you even open your mouth. The words you choose in difficult conversations can either pour water on a fire or throw gasoline on it. Accusatory language is gasoline. Statements that start with "you always" or "you never" are almost guaranteed to trigger defensiveness because they feel like character assassinations rather than observations. The other person stops listening to your point and starts defending their identity. Instead, use language that describes your experience without making claims about their character or intentions. There's a world of difference between "you don't respect my time" and "I feel frustrated when meeting times change without a heads up, because it makes it hard for me to plan my day." The first version is an attack. The second is an honest sharing of your experience that leaves room for the other person to explain, apologize, or problem solve without feeling like they need to defend their entire character. Timing and environment matter more than most people realize. Having a difficult conversation when either person is stressed, exhausted, or distracted is like trying to plant seeds in a parking lot. Nothing good grows there. Choose a time when both of you can be present and focused. Choose a private setting where neither person risks embarrassment. And if you notice that emotions are too hot in the moment, it's not only acceptable, but wise to press pause. Something like, "This conversation is really important to me, and I want to give it the attention it deserves. Can we pick this back up tomorrow after we've both had some time to think?" That's not avoidance. That's wisdom. How you begin the conversation sets the trajectory for everything that follows. Starting with an attack almost certainly leads to an argument. Starting with an acknowledgement of the relationship and your positive intent creates psychological safety. Something as simple as, "I value what we have, and I want to talk about something that's been on my mind because I think addressing it will make things better for both of us," signals that you're approaching this as a teammate, not an opponent. Staying emotionally regulated during the conversation is perhaps the hardest part. When someone says something that triggers anger or hurt, your body responds before your mind can catch up. Your jaw tightens. Your breathing shallows. Your thoughts narrow to self-defense. In these moments, having practiced techniques for staying calm becomes invaluable. A deep breath, a brief pause before responding. A conscious reminder of your goal for the conversation. These tiny interventions create space between stimulus and response, and in that space lives your ability to choose a constructive path rather than a reactive one. If emotions do escalate, despite your best efforts, de-escalation becomes your priority. Lower your voice instead of raising it. Slow down your speech. Acknowledge the other person's feelings without necessarily endorsing their interpretation. Something like, "I can see this is really important to you, and I want to understand your perspective fully," validates their emotional experience without surrendering your own position. It communicates, "I take you seriously," which is often all someone needs to hear before they can calm down enough to listen. Listen deeply for the needs and concerns hiding beneath positions and demands. When someone insists on a specific solution, there's always an underlying need driving that insistence. If a colleague demands that all meetings be cut to 30 minutes, they might really be expressing a need for efficiency, respect for their time, or space to focus on deep work. If you can identify and address the underlying need, you often discover creative solutions that satisfy both people in ways the original demand never could. Not every difficult conversation reaches resolution in one sitting. Complex issues often need multiple discussions. Emotional wounds sometimes need time to process before productive dialogue is possible. Ending a conversation with mutual respect and a clear plan for when you'll continue is far more productive than forcing a resolution when neither person is ready. And remember this, the goal of most difficult conversations shouldn't be winning. It should be understanding. Even when you can't agree, you can reach a place of mutual respect where both people feel heard and where the relationship remains intact. Sometimes the bravest thing you can say is, "I understand your position, and even though I see it differently, I respect where you're coming from." That kind of statement doesn't mean surrender. It means maturity. And it keeps doors open that argument would slam shut. Practice having difficult conversations in small moments, so you're ready when the big ones arrive. The skills you develop navigating everyday disagreements, minor frustrations, and small conflicts are the exact same skills that carry you through the conversations that truly matter. Chapter 8. The Art of Making People Feel Like They Matter. Let me ask you something. Think about the most magnetic person you've ever met. Not the loudest or the most conventionally impressive. The person who made you feel like you were the only one in the room. The one you walked away from thinking, "I really liked that person," even though you might not have been able to explain exactly why. That quality people call charisma? It's not some mystical gift distributed at random by the universe. It's a specific set of behaviors that anyone can learn. And at its core, every single one of those behaviors comes down to one thing: making other people feel seen, valued, and important. In a world where most people are half listening while checking their phone, where conversations have become transactions instead of connections, The simple act of giving someone your complete, undivided attention has become extraordinarily rare. And rare things are valuable. When someone feels that you are truly, completely, fully with them, without your mind drifting to your to-do list or your eyes glancing at notifications, they experience something most people almost never receive, and they remember you for it. Developing presence starts with training your attention like you'd train any other muscle. During conversations, you'll notice your mind wandering. That's normal. The practice isn't about never drifting. It's about noticing the drift and gently bringing yourself back to the person in front of you. Back to their words, back to their eyes, back to the energy they're sharing with you. Over time, this mental discipline becomes easier, and the quality of your connections deepens in ways you'll find remarkable. Charismatic communicators also master the art of asking questions that go beyond the surface. Most social conversation operates on autopilot. How's your weekend? Fine. Yours? How's work? Busy. You know how it is. These exchanges are like passing someone on a sidewalk. You acknowledge each other, but nobody stops walking. Charismatic people stop walking. They ask questions that invite real answers. Instead of, "How was your weekend?" they ask, "What was the highlight of your weekend?" Instead of, "How's work?" they say, "What's the project you're most energized about right now?" These questions signal genuine curiosity and give people permission to share something meaningful rather than delivering the standard script. But asking good questions only matters if you actually listen to the answers. And not just listen to respond, but listen to understand. When someone shares something and you follow up with a question that shows you were truly tracking their story, that you caught a detail they thought would go unnoticed, something powerful happens. They feel valued in a way that's increasingly rare. And value creates connection. Connection creates trust. Trust creates influence. It's a beautiful chain reaction that starts with the simple act of paying real attention. Finding genuine common ground is another cornerstone of connection. But this doesn't mean pretending to like things you don't, or faking agreement to seem agreeable. Authentic connection comes from discovering shared experiences, values, or challenges that create real resonance. Maybe you both know what it's like to start over in a new city. Maybe you share a commitment to mentoring younger people in your field. Maybe you both secretly think most meetings could have been emails. The specific point of connection matters less than the fact that it's genuine. There's a subtle art to matching someone's energy without mimicking them. When you're talking to someone who's thoughtful and measured, slowing your own pace slightly creates harmony. When someone is enthusiastic and animated, bringing your energy up to meet theirs shows you're engaged rather than bored. This isn't acting, it's attunement. It's the natural thing humans do when they're genuinely connected. You're just doing it consciously instead of leaving it to chance. Validation is one of the most underestimated tools in all of human communication. When you acknowledge someone's experience, their feelings, their perspective, without needing to fix, judge, or redirect, you give them a gift most people rarely receive. Validation sounds like, "That makes complete sense. I'd feel the same way in your position. That's a really thoughtful way to look at it. These phrases don't mean you agree with everything. They mean you're taking the person seriously. And being taken seriously is something humans are almost starving for. Stories are the currency of charismatic connection. Not stories designed to impress, stories designed to relate. When you share a story about a time you struggled, a mistake you made and learned from, or a challenge that tested you, you show vulnerability that others can connect with. Nobody bonds over perfection. People bond over shared humanity. The best stories for building connection are ones that say, "I've been where you are. I know what that feels like. You're not alone in this." Using someone's name naturally in conversation is a small thing that creates surprisingly big effects. Hearing our own name activates something in our brain that makes us feel recognized and acknowledged. But the key word is naturally. Dropping someone's name into every other sentence feels mechanical and manipulative. Weaving it in at natural moments, especially when making a genuine point or expressing appreciation, creates warmth without artificiality. Specific appreciation is another charisma multiplier. Generic praise like "great job" barely registers, but specific recognition lands with real impact. Something like, "The way you handled that difficult client question today showed real patience and understanding. I noticed how you acknowledged their frustration before redirecting to the solution, and I think that's what turned the whole conversation around." That kind of feedback tells someone you weren't just vaguely aware of their contribution. You were watching closely enough to see the craft in what they did. And that makes people feel genuinely valued. Energy management is something charismatic people understand instinctively. You can't pour from an empty cup. If you're running on fumes, stressed to the breaking point, or emotionally depleted, you simply don't have the bandwidth to be fully present for other people. This means taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's a prerequisite for meaningful connection. It means being strategic about where you invest your energy, bringing your best self to the interactions that matter most, and knowing when you need to recharge so you can show up fully the next time. Humor, when wielded with care, is one of the most powerful bonding tools humans have. Laughter releases tension, creates shared positive experiences, and builds memories that strengthen relationships. But charismatic humor is never built on tearing someone down. It's self-aware, observational, or situational in ways that bring people closer together. It finds the absurdity in shared experiences, rather than the flaws in specific people. And it's always calibrated to the audience and the moment. Ultimately, charisma isn't a performance. It's an orientation. It's the decision to walk through the world genuinely interested in the people you encounter. It's the practice of making others feel valued, not because you want something from them, but because you believe every person deserves to feel that they matter. When that belief is sincere, everything else, the questions, the listening, the validation, the humor, flows naturally from it. Chapter 9: Ethical Influence and the Art of Changing Minds. Let's clear something up right away. Persuasion and manipulation are not the same thing. Manipulation is about getting what you want at someone else's expense. Persuasion, real persuasion, is about helping someone see possibilities, information, and perspectives they might not have considered, and then respecting their right to make their own decision with that expanded view. When you persuade ethically, you're not tricking anyone. You're serving them. You're helping them make better informed choices that often serve their interests as much as yours. That's not deception. That's leadership. The most effective persuasion doesn't start with your idea. It starts with deep understanding of the other person's world. What are they trying to achieve? What problems keep them up at night? What would success look like for them? What fears or concerns might make them hesitant to change course? When you invest time in genuinely understanding someone's priorities and pressures before presenting your case, you earn something that no argument technique can manufacture: trust. The principle of reciprocity is woven into our social DNA. When someone genuinely helps us, we feel a natural pull to help them in return. This isn't about keeping score or creating artificial debts. It's about building a pattern of generosity that naturally creates goodwill. Share useful information without expecting immediate returns. Make introductions that help others achieve their goals. Offer your expertise when someone is struggling. When people consistently associate you with positive outcomes and generous behavior, they become naturally more receptive to your ideas and requests. Not because you've manipulated them, but because you've earned their attention through genuine value. Social proof speaks to something deep in human psychology. When we're uncertain about a decision, we instinctively look at what people similar to us have done. This is why relevant examples and stories from peers are so much more persuasive than abstract arguments. When you can share how someone facing similar challenges, with similar constraints, achieved positive results through the approach you're suggesting, you dramatically reduce the uncertainty that prevents action. But the proof needs to be genuine and relevant. Irrelevant success stories or fabricated examples don't just fail to persuade. They actively damage your credibility. The most compelling social proof comes from people your audience relates to and respects. People who faced the same doubts and obstacles and found the approach genuinely valuable. The commitment and consistency principle recognizes something beautiful about human nature. People genuinely want to act in alignment with their stated values and previous choices. When you can show how what you're proposing connects naturally with positions they've already taken, beliefs they've already expressed, or values they've already demonstrated, you make it psychologically comfortable for them to say yes. You're not pushing them somewhere new. You're showing them that what you're suggesting is a natural next step on a path they've already chosen. Scarcity and urgency can be legitimate and helpful when they're rooted in real constraints. If there's a genuine deadline, real resource limitations, or actual opportunity costs associated with waiting, Sharing that information helps people make informed decisions about timing. But manufactured urgency is a manipulation that people eventually see through. And when they do, they stop trusting you permanently. The difference between legitimate urgency and manufactured pressure is the difference between a doctor saying we need to address this soon because the condition will worsen, and a used car salesman saying this deal expires in 1 hour. Helping people see the full picture of their choices is one of the most powerful and ethical persuasion tools available. Most people make decisions based on incomplete comparisons. They see the cost of action, but not the cost of inaction. They see the risk of change, but not the risk of standing still. When you gently help someone see both sides of the equation, what they gain and what they give up with each choice, you empower them to make truly informed decisions rather than decisions based on fear or inertia. Genuine expertise and authority carry natural persuasive weight, but only when they're real and relevant. Building credibility isn't about collecting credentials to display. It's about demonstrating deep knowledge, sound judgment, and honest engagement over time. It also means being transparent about the boundaries of your expertise. Saying this is outside my area, but I know someone who could help, actually increases your credibility rather than diminishing it. People trust advisors who prioritize accuracy over the appearance of knowing everything. Logic alone rarely moves people to action. Emotional connection is what transforms understanding into motivation. When you can help someone vividly imagine how their life or work will improve, when you can connect your proposal to outcomes they deeply care about, you create a pull that pure reasoning can't generate. But emotional appeals must stand on a foundation of truth. Over-promising and under-delivering might create short-term wins, but it builds long-term disappointment and permanently damages trust. The most sustainable influence comes from making people feel like co-creators rather than recipients of your ideas. When you involve others in shaping solutions, ask for their input, incorporate their feedback, and give them ownership of the outcome, something powerful happens. They stop seeing your proposal as something being done to them and start seeing it as something they're building together with you. People fight against ideas imposed on them. They champion ideas they helped create. Timing matters enormously in persuasion. People are most open to new perspectives when they're dissatisfied with current results, facing unfamiliar challenges, or going through transitions that naturally loosen old patterns. Presenting ideas when someone is ready to hear them requires patience and the wisdom to recognize that sometimes the most persuasive thing you can do is wait for a better moment rather than pushing when defenses are high. True influence isn't about getting people to do what you want. It's about expanding what they see as possible and trusting them to make good choices with that broader vision. When your persuasion comes from a genuine desire to help, people don't just agree with you in the moment. They come back to you again and again because they've learned that your influence makes their life better. Chapter 10. Turning Pressure into Rocket Fuel. Let me tell you something that might change how you see nervousness forever. That knot in your stomach before a big presentation? That racing heartbeat before a job interview? That trembling in your hands before you stand up to speak? Those sensations aren't signs that something is wrong with you. They're signs that something is right. Your body is preparing to perform at its highest level. The question is whether you let that energy work for you or against you. Most people interpret pressure as a threat signal. Their brain goes, "Oh no, I'm nervous. Something bad is about to happen." And from that interpretation, a cascade of unhelpful responses follows. Their muscles tighten. Their breathing becomes shallow. Their thinking narrows. They start focusing on everything that could go wrong. And, ironically, that focus on potential failure becomes the very thing that causes the stumbles they were afraid of. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy built on a misunderstanding. But here's the reframe that changes everything. The physical sensations of anxiety and the physical sensations of excitement are virtually identical. Same elevated heart rate, same heightened alertness, same surge of energy through your body. The only difference is the story your brain tells about those sensations. One story says danger, the other says opportunity. And you get to choose which story you believe. This isn't positive thinking fluff. It's supported by real research. When people are taught to reinterpret their stress response as helpful rather than harmful, their performance actually improves. Their blood vessels stay relaxed instead of constricting. Their thinking remains flexible instead of narrowing. Their body delivers energy to their brain and muscles instead of shutting down higher cognitive function. Same chemistry, different interpretation. Dramatically different outcome. Understanding what's happening inside your body during high-pressure moments gives you practical tools for managing those moments. When your brain perceives high stakes, your sympathetic nervous system kicks into gear, flooding you with hormones designed for physical emergencies. Running from predators, fighting off attacks. These hormones are spectacularly unhelpful when what you actually need is calm, focused, articulate thinking. The fastest way to shift out of this survival mode is through your breathing, specifically controlled breathing with longer exhales than inhales. When you exhale slowly and fully, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is essentially the calm-down signal to your entire body. Try this technique before any high-pressure speaking moment. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 7 counts. Breathe out for 8 counts. Repeat this cycle 4 times. Within about 90 seconds, you'll feel a noticeable shift from anxious buzzing to grounded alertness. Your thinking clears. Your shoulders drop. Your voice steadies. It's remarkably effective and completely invisible to anyone watching. Preparation is your greatest ally against pressure, but it has to be the right kind of preparation. Here's where most people go wrong. They memorize their presentation word for word. They write out scripts and try to deliver them exactly as written. This approach feels safe, but it's actually a trap. Because now your performance depends entirely on perfect recall under stress, which is exactly the cognitive function that stress compromises first. You've built your house on the one piece of ground most likely to shift beneath you. Instead, prepare by understanding your material so deeply that you could explain it 10 different ways. Know your key points cold, but practice expressing them using different words, different examples, different analogies each time. This creates what I call flexible mastery. You know the territory so well that you can navigate it from any direction. If your mind goes blank, you haven't lost your script. You just find another path to the same destination. That flexibility is what creates genuine confidence, not memorization. Visualization deserves a place in your preparation toolkit. And I'm not talking about vaguely hoping things go well. I'm talking about detailed mental rehearsal, where you see yourself in the specific environment, making eye contact with real people, delivering your key points with clarity, handling questions with composure. Include challenges in your visualization, too. See yourself losing your place and smoothly recovering. Imagine a tough question and watch yourself handle it with grace. This kind of rehearsal creates neural pathways that your brain can follow when the real moment arrives. Like walking a trail you've already traveled. Physical preparation matters more than most people realize. Your body and your mind are not separate systems. They're one interconnected organism, and what happens in one profoundly affects the other. Regular exercise lowers your baseline anxiety levels, meaning you start from a calmer place before pressure even enters the picture. Adequate sleep ensures your cognitive resources are fully stocked when you need them most. Solid nutrition provides steady energy without the spikes and crashes that can destabilize your emotional state during critical moments. On the day of an important speaking event, be strategic. Avoid excessive caffeine, which amplifies every anxiety symptom your body produces. Eat something that gives you sustained energy without making you feel heavy. Arrive early enough to settle into the space, feel the room, and get comfortable before the stakes go up. These small logistical choices add up to a meaningfully calmer starting point. When pressure mounts in the moment, grounding techniques pull you back to the present and out of your anxious imagination. One powerful approach is engaging your senses deliberately. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 textures you can feel, 3 sounds you can hear. This sensory inventory forces your brain to process the actual present moment rather than the catastrophic futures it was busy manufacturing. Progressive muscle relaxation is another tool that works remarkably well under pressure. Starting from your toes and moving upward, deliberately tense each muscle group for 5 seconds, and then release. The contrast between tension and release teaches your body to let go of the physical tightness that accumulates during stress and interferes with smooth, natural delivery. Your relationship with mistakes needs a complete overhaul if you want to speak well under pressure. Most people amplify their anxiety by imagining that any stumble will be catastrophic, that everyone will notice, that they'll lose all credibility, that the mistake will define them. In reality, audiences are far more forgiving than your inner critic suggests. They're focused on your overall message, not auditing your delivery for imperfections. A brief stumble that you recover from gracefully often goes completely unnoticed. Develop simple recovery strategies for common challenges. If you lose your train of thought, have a bridge phrase ready. Something like, "Let me take a moment to make sure I'm expressing this clearly," buys you time while making you sound thoughtful rather than lost. If you misspeak, correct yourself briefly and move forward without making a production out of it. The less attention you draw to a mistake, the less your audience notices or cares. Building genuine pressure tolerance requires gradual exposure. You wouldn't train for a marathon by attempting 26 miles on your first day. Start with low-stakes speaking opportunities. Volunteer a comment in a small team meeting. Share a thought at a casual gathering. Join a group where speaking practice is the whole point. Each time you successfully navigate a pressure moment and come out the other side intact, your brain collects evidence that these situations are manageable. Over time, the threshold for what triggers your stress response rises, and situations that once felt paralyzing start feeling merely stimulating. The most transformative pressure management strategy is shifting your focus from yourself to your audience. When you're consumed with how you look, whether you'll stumble, or what people think of you, you create enormous internal pressure that works against your performance. But when you redirect that energy toward serving the people in front of you, toward asking yourself, "How can I help them? What do they need from me right now?" the entire dynamic changes. Your nervous energy transforms into purposeful energy. Your self-consciousness dissolves into genuine engagement. And ironically, this is when you perform at your absolute best, because you've stopped getting in your own way. Remember that pressure is not your enemy. It's a signal that you're operating in territory that matters. Instead of wishing it would disappear, learn to welcome it as a companion. The butterflies don't need to go away. They just need to learn to fly in formation. Chapter 11. Owning the stage, whether it seats 5 or 500. Public speaking is where everything you've been building comes together. All your work on mindset, body language, vocal control, listening, and emotional intelligence converges into a single, high-visibility performance. And here's what makes it both terrifying and exhilarating. Public speaking amplifies everything. Your strengths shine brighter. Your weaknesses become more visible. The opportunity to connect, inspire, and influence grows enormously, and so does the fear of falling short. But I want to reframe something for you before we go any further. Public speaking isn't a special category of communication reserved for stages and podiums. Every time you share an idea in a meeting, explain something to a small group, or present your work to colleagues, you're doing public speaking. The principles are identical, whether your audience is 5 people around a conference table or 500 in an auditorium. Master the fundamentals, and the setting becomes irrelevant. The single biggest mistake people make in public speaking is making it about themselves. They worry about how they'll be perceived. They obsess over potential mistakes. They focus on their own nervousness. And all that self-focused energy creates a wall between them and the very people they're trying to reach. Great speakers flip this entirely. They make it about the audience. Every decision, from content to delivery, serves one question: how can I create the most value for the people in front of me? Before you craft a single slide or write a single note, understand your audience deeply. What do they already know about your topic? What gaps exist in their understanding? What problems are they trying to solve? What would make this time genuinely worthwhile for them? When you can answer these questions, you stop guessing at what to include and start building something that feels tailored, relevant, and valuable. Structure your presentation as a journey with clear signposts. Open with something that immediately grabs attention and answers the unspoken question every audience member is asking. Why should I care about this? Then preview where you're headed so people have a mental map to follow. Develop your main points with evidence, stories, and examples that transform abstract concepts into lived experiences. Close with a strong conclusion that leaves people knowing exactly what to do next. Your opening deserves special attention because it determines whether your audience leans in or checks out. Skip the weak openers that everyone defaults to. Good morning, my name is, and today I'll be talking about. These phrases are invisible. They register as background noise. Instead, open with something that creates a spark. A question that makes people think. A statistic that surprises. A brief story that pulls people into a specific moment. A bold statement that demands engagement. Limit yourself to 3 to 5 main points. This isn't arbitrary. It's based on how human brains actually process information. Trying to cover 12 ideas means nobody fully absorbs any of them. But developing 3 ideas thoroughly, with evidence, examples, and emotional resonance, means your audience walks away actually remembering and being able to act on what you shared. Stories are the most powerful weapon in any presenter's arsenal. Data informs the mind. Stories move the heart. And the heart is where decisions actually happen. The best presentation stories are specific, sensory, and connected to your key message. Personal stories work especially well because they show vulnerability and authenticity that audiences instinctively trust and connect with. When telling a story, keep it focused. Include enough vivid detail to make people see the scene, but trim anything that doesn't serve the point you're making. Your slides should support your presentation, not replace it. The moment you put paragraphs of text on a screen and start reading them aloud, you've made yourself redundant. Your audience can read faster than you can speak, so they're reading ahead while half listening to you, and nobody is fully engaged with anything. Instead, use visuals that amplify your spoken words. A single powerful image. A clean chart that makes data tangible. A few words that anchor your current point. Your slides should make people want to look at you for the explanation, not stare at the screen for a transcript. Delivery is where preparation meets presence. The goal is conversational confidence, sounding like you're sharing something important with people you care about, rather than performing a monologue at strangers. This means varying your pace naturally, using gestures that feel authentic, making real eye contact with individuals rather than scanning the room like a security camera, and letting your genuine enthusiasm for the topic come through. In large groups, eye contact works differently than in one-on-one conversations. Instead of trying to look at everyone, which creates a weird, unfocused effect, lock eyes with one person for a full thought, maybe 3 to 5 seconds. Then shift to someone in a completely different section of the room. Do this throughout your talk, and every person in the audience will feel a moment of personal connection with you. Handling questions well requires both preparation and humility. Anticipate the questions most likely to come up and think through your responses. When a question surprises you, it's completely fine to pause and think before answering. That pause shows you're taking the question seriously, rather than giving a reflexive, shallow response. And when you genuinely don't know an answer, say so with confidence. I don't have that information right now, but I'll find out and follow up with you. Honesty builds more trust than any improvised bluff ever could. End your presentation with the same intentionality you used to open it. Summarize your key messages briefly. Reinforce why they matter, and leave your audience with a clear call to action or next step. Avoid the weak endings that drain all your built-up momentum. Don't trail off with, "That's pretty much it," or, "So, yeah, any questions?" End with conviction. End with energy. End in a way that makes people want to stand up and do something with what they've just learned. The more frequently you present, the more natural it becomes. Seek out opportunities actively. Every time you stand up and share something with a group of people, you're depositing experience into a bank account that pays compound interest for the rest of your life. Chapter 12. The Emotional Intelligence Behind Every Great Conversation. You could master every technique in this guide, every vocal exercise, every body language principle, every persuasion strategy, and still fall flat if you're missing the invisible ingredient that makes all of it work. Emotional intelligence. It's the difference between someone who speaks skillfully and someone who speaks in a way that genuinely moves people. Emotional intelligence in communication isn't one thing. It's 4 things working together. Self-awareness, the ability to recognize your own emotional patterns. Self-management, the ability to regulate those emotions rather than being hijacked by them. Social awareness, the ability to read what others are feeling. And relationship management, the ability to navigate emotional dynamics to create positive outcomes for everyone involved. Self-awareness is where it all starts. You can't manage what you can't see. And most people go through their entire lives on emotional autopilot, reacting to situations based on patterns programmed years ago without ever examining whether those patterns still serve them. Developing emotional self-awareness means paying attention to your internal weather throughout the day. What situations make you feel expansive and confident? What triggers contraction and defensiveness? What topics bring up heat that you struggle to contain? This internal monitoring isn't navel-gazing, it's strategic intelligence. Because your emotional state doesn't stay inside you, it leaks into everything you communicate. When you're stressed, Your voice tightens and your body language closes off. When you're anxious, your words become rushed and imprecise. When you're confident and centered, your delivery is natural, your presence is grounded, and people feel safe around you. Understanding your emotional patterns is the first step to choosing your emotional state, rather than being chosen by it. Self-management is the practice of acknowledging your emotions while deciding how to express them. This isn't suppression. Stuffing feelings down is like holding a beach ball underwater. It takes enormous energy, and eventually the ball shoots up anyway, usually at the worst possible moment. Real self-management means feeling your anger, your frustration, your nervousness, without letting those feelings drive your behavior on autopilot. The pause is your most powerful self-management tool. When a strong emotion hits during a conversation, that brief moment between feeling the emotion and choosing your response is where your entire communication skill set either activates or collapses. A single deep breath in that gap can be the difference between a reply you're proud of and one you regret for years. Social awareness means reading the emotional atmosphere of a room and the individual emotional states of the people you're talking to. People broadcast their feelings constantly through their tone, their facial expressions, their posture, their energy levels, and the words they emphasize or avoid. Most communicators miss these signals entirely because they're too focused on their own internal experience. Learning to read others requires shifting your attention outward. Watch for changes in someone's energy. Notice when their body language closes or opens. Listen for incongruence between their words and their emotional signals. Someone might say everything's fine, while their tight jaw and folded arms tell a completely different story. When you can detect these discrepancies, you can respond to what's really happening rather than just what's being spoken. Different people express emotions in vastly different ways, and recognizing these differences is crucial. Some people are open books. Their feelings are visible on their face and audible in their voice. Others are more reserved, communicating emotions through subtle shifts you'll miss if you're not paying close attention. Some process feelings by talking them through. Others need quiet space to sort through their emotions before they're ready to share. Adapting your approach to match someone's emotional style shows profound respect for who they are. Empathy is the bridge between awareness and connection. When someone shares an experience with you, genuine empathy means more than understanding their situation intellectually. It means allowing yourself to feel something of what they're feeling. This emotional resonance is what transforms your response from technically correct to deeply meaningful. And people can tell the difference instantly. Validation is perhaps the most underused tool in emotional intelligence. When you simply acknowledge someone's emotional experience as real and legitimate, without rushing to fix it, advise them, or redirect the conversation, you create psychological safety that opens the door to deeper, more honest communication. I can see why that would feel overwhelming. It makes sense that you'd be frustrated by that. These simple statements communicate something profound. Your feelings matter to me. Emotional contagion is a phenomenon worth understanding deeply. Emotions spread between people like weather patterns. Walk into a room where someone is anxious, and you'll likely start feeling restless yourself. Spend time with someone who radiates calm confidence, and you'll notice your own shoulders relaxing. This happens automatically through mirror neurons and unconscious mimicry. As a communicator, this means you bear some responsibility for the emotional climate you create. When you stay centered during tense moments, you help others find their center. When you bring genuine warmth to an interaction, warmth spreads. When you maintain confidence in the face of uncertainty, that confidence becomes available to everyone in the room. This isn't about being fake or performing emotions you don't feel. It's about understanding that your emotional state is a contribution to every interaction, and choosing to contribute something that elevates rather than drains. Conflict situations are the ultimate test of emotional intelligence. When stakes are high and feelings are running hot, every instinct pushes toward reactivity. But this is precisely when emotional intelligence matters most. The skill isn't in avoiding emotion, it's in holding space for emotion while still guiding the conversation toward productive territory. Behind every position someone takes in a conflict, there are feelings and unmet needs driving that position. When you can identify and acknowledge those underlying emotions, even while disagreeing with the position itself, you dramatically increase the chances of finding a resolution that works for everyone. People don't need you to agree with them. They need you to understand them. And that understanding, offered genuinely, creates the openness necessary for real problem solving. Building emotional intelligence is a lifelong practice. It deepens every year if you stay committed to it. Pay attention to how people respond to you. Ask for honest feedback from people you trust. Notice patterns in your relationships that might point to blind spots in your emotional awareness. The goal isn't perfection. It's growth. And every increment of growth in emotional intelligence multiplies the power of every other communication skill you possess. Chapter 13. This is your moment. I want to be honest with you about something. Everything you've just read, every technique, every principle, every strategy, none of it matters if it stays on this page. Knowledge that doesn't become action is just entertainment. And you didn't come here to be entertained. You came here because something inside you knows you have more to say, more to give, more to become. Maybe you've spent years feeling like your voice doesn't matter. Maybe you've watched opportunities slip through your fingers because you couldn't find the right words at the right time. Maybe you've left conversations replaying what you should have said, what you could have said, if only your mind hadn't gone blank and your heart hadn't started racing. I see you, and I want you to know something that I wish someone had told me years ago. Your voice already matters. It mattered before you read a single word of this guide. It mattered when you were stumbling. It mattered when you were silent. It mattered when you thought nobody was listening. The only thing that's changing now is that you're learning to let it out. There's a version of you that's been waiting quietly behind all the fear, all the self-doubt, all the memories of moments that went wrong. That version of you doesn't need to become someone else. They just need permission to show up. And that permission doesn't come from a book or a video or a technique. It comes from you, from the decision you make right now, today, that your ideas deserve to be heard, that your perspective has value, that the world needs what you carry inside you. I'm not going to pretend the road ahead is easy. There will be moments when your voice shakes, moments when the old stories creep back in and whisper that you're not ready, not smart enough, not eloquent enough. There will be conversations that don't go the way you hoped, and presentations where you stumble. That's not failure. That's the path. Every single person you've ever admired for their ability to communicate walked that exact same road. They just kept walking. So here's what I'm asking of you. Start small. Start today. Not next week. Not when you feel ready, because if you wait until you feel ready, you'll wait forever. Readiness doesn't come before action. It comes from action. Speak up in one conversation where you normally stay quiet. Share one thought you'd usually keep to yourself. Ask one question you've been holding back. And when you do, notice what happens. Not just externally, but inside you. Notice the small flame of courage that lights up when you choose to be heard instead of hiding. You don't need to be perfect. You never did. You just need to be willing. Willing to show up with an open heart and an honest voice. Willing to care more about connection than perfection. Willing to believe, even on the days when it feels impossible, that what you have to say matters. Because it does. It always did. Your voice is not just sound waves traveling through air. It's the bridge between your inner world and every person you'll ever meet. It's how you'll comfort a friend who's breaking, how you'll inspire a team that's lost its way, how you'll tell someone you love them in a way they'll never forget, how you'll stand up for what's right when staying silent would be easier. This is bigger than communication skills. This is about becoming the fullest version of yourself. And that journey starts the moment you decide to open your mouth and trust that what comes out is enough. You are enough. Your voice is enough. Now go use it.